What is your definition of food noise? How does it, what is it? How does it impact you? I want you to think about that. Because we all, I would say, especially, with a history of dieting and different programs and doing different things, we all have thoughts and feelings around food. We all, and some of us, I think, are very clear on being able to define what that is. I think when we put the thoughts and feelings that we have around a particular eating or exercise plan or our history of eating and exercise, and that gets layered upon the thoughts and feelings that we have about ourselves and about who and what we see in the mirror. It's a lot. It's a lot. Um, Now, a couple of things that I want you to think about. Well, one, and I'll say this, um, I think I think for really anyone, I think people in general, but anyone on a weight loss journey that's trying to figure this stuff out, if you can work with a therapist that is a good fit for you, that you can have a productive working relationship with, that's going to help you with this. And when I say productive working relationship, you've worked with them long enough to not only be able to talk, but when they say things about blind spots, things you either don't see or don't want to see, you're receptive. They can say things to you about your own patterns in a very disarming way, and you are open to changes, and then you can come up with strategies with them on how to actually implement those changes in your life. That is a huge benefit of therapy. There's all kinds. So if you can get in with a therapist and find one of the therapists that would be a good fit for you, it's not. I don't think you have a therapist soulmate, but I do think there are some that are going to be much better fits for you than others. That will always help with this. Now, knowing that there's a lot of obstacles for having that productive working relationship with a therapist, I do think it's always helpful to have these conversations with yourself and really think about these kinds of things for when you go in and yes, when you're trying to untangle this stuff for yourself, but when you go in and talk to the doctors that you work with, or really start to figure out why things are what they are for you. But one thing that I want you to think about is a lot of times when people are talking about food noise, they think it's so that they give in and they'll eat emotionally, right? This leads to emotional eating. Well, what if the food noise isn't trying to get you to cope with, like, using food to deal with your emotions, cope with it emotionally? What if the food noise is a distraction for something that is deeper? Again, this stuff ties in to not only who and what we see in the mirror, but how we feel about ourselves. So could it possibly be something different? Could it possibly be a mix to where it's not just you? Oh my gosh, I feel a lot of things and I want to use food to soothe my emotions. And I want to talk about that specifically. This whole thing that having an emotional response to food is very damaging, because here's the thing: most of us live in cultures where celebrating with food, whether by yourself or within a group, is part of kind of how things are. Really isn't something that you should feel guilty about doing. Also, there's comfort at times in soothing your emotions with food by yourself. I've mentioned my love for do that sometimes with pints of ice cream. But there's a and side thing on the ice cream. What I've actually trained myself to do with that now is I pretty much will eat 2 or 3 bites of whatever, and then I put it back in the freezer and I come back to it. I've had pints of ice cream in there. Um, it's taken me a couple months to go through like 4 pints of ice cream. So whereas I used to be able to do that a week if I wanted to. Right? Now, one thing that I do want to call out a lot of times, because when I talk about like having emotions around food and all this, people will say, well, that's what got me to where I am now. And what I would want you to think about is yes, those actions, constantly eating the things you were doing and the ways that you were doing it, yes, that did get you there. Absolutely. But digging into the why to a point where you can see it and forgive yourself for it and then figure out how you want to move forward from that can change everything. Just because you used to eat, there are people that do this that would order two pizzas for yourself, eat them completely. Do that 3 nights a week, that you did that 7 nights a week. There are people that do all this stuff at every level. They've been at the situation they've been in. So I totally get when you hear me talking about this. Yeah, well, that's what got me where I am in the first place. How can we change that? How much of how you're viewing how you are around that food can we question? Can we observe it? Can we question it? Can we change it? Now, the thing with food noise, I talked to you guys about my marketing background. What we now call food noise has been around for a long time, right? We've had constant thoughts about food. Sometimes it's very loud chatter, right? The chatter about it. But the food noise, really, I feel like where you've heard the most about it is once the GLP-1s were available and then became popular. Because then the problem, not only do they help you lose the weight, but they stop the food noise. They stop it. But think about the way that I positioned the chatter and the noise. It could be something that is something deeper. It could also be something at times like soothing your emotions with food isn't a bad thing. There's people that do it every day and they're fine with it. They don't have the mental tug of war on the back and forth with it. Now, they've had a completely different experience around food than you have. You and I have had completely different experiences. And I'm not telling you that just because I have an opinion on it, that this is in the way that I do things. So I mentioned the ice cream. I eat 2 to 3 bites of ice cream, put it back in the freezer. Most time, like pretty much all the time now, actually. I'm not saying everybody should do that. You might hear that and be like, I could apply something like that. Or you might be like, it's not me. I just want you to figure this stuff out for yourself. You do have the power to change. I believe. I believe people do have the power to change. I believe we don't change until we're ready. But I give you credit for not only having the ability, but you're going to have the skill to like the ability to want to change, or the awareness to want to change, and the ability to actually do it. I think you got all that inside you. I give you credit for that, but you're not going to do it before you're ready. That's everybody. But this whole thing with food noise, let's give it a name. This is what the marketing does. They did a really good job of marketing food noise. Let's name it. Let's call it food noise. And for anybody that wants to argue and say, well, actually, food noise started. Okay, if the term came out earlier, cool. But I'm telling you, when it really ramped up. When it really ramped up is when the GLP-1s started coming out and started gaining traction. Not only is this going to help you lose weight, but it's going to solve the food noise. And what marketing can really help to do is create or highlight or create a problem that maybe you didn't even realize that you had, and then offer you the solution. Now, I think if somebody is working with their doctor, a GLP-1 is a great tool. It helps people lose weight in ways that they've never been able to do it. Now, there is also another part when you lose, and you probably have experienced this with weight loss in the past. Definitely, if you've lost it quickly, is your mind does take time to catch up to what your body has done, and you have to be very intentional about it. We talk about that, but this isn't me. I think GLP-1s are good as long as you and your doctor have decided that this is a good plan for you. But I think you got to work on this, the inside out approach, the what's going on, changing who you see in the mirror and not having it so much based off of what you're seeing. If you're using the what as a way to to tear yourself down. I think that work needs to be ongoing. It's something that's we're not going to be perfect with. There's a lot of nuance with it, and but I think it's important. And I will say, as a marketer, what is the problem that I have created? I don't like that the fitness industry markets against our insecurities. I don't like that there's a mental tug of war going on in people's heads where they look in the mirror, and because they don't like what they see, they don't like who they see, and they've been conditioned to feel that way. And I feel like, as a whole, even when people are successful with weight loss, the whole response is, well, that's just the way it is. I'm not satisfied with that. But is that the problem that am I creating that problem? No. Am I highlighting that problem? Yes. Do I offer solutions to that? Also, yes. But I think this is such a massive thing to work through. That's why I give you guys the tools to do it on your own. Because if I was just to do, because I've mentioned before, I do training and I do coaching. I do a lot less of both than I used to, because what I'm trying to do now is get you guys to really like figure out the nuance. I'm not giving you new information. I'm giving you a different way of looking at this stuff so you can figure out how to use the stuff that you already have, the experience, the skills that you have, and how you can apply this in your own life. So if you're brand new, definitely head to yourlevelfitness.com. You can check out the framework. That's where you take all that experience that you have and you put it within that structure and figure out how it's going to work for you. And I do also recommend that you sign up for the journal prompts. Those prompts, we have a theme, a weekly theme, and then each day, it's a multi-level journal prompt. So I ask you a question, and then there's a follow-up to that question. A follow-up. Usually we go 4 levels deep. So yeah, and it's designed to help you connect with yourself and really see the things from a different point of view, a nuanced point of view that you may not be currently seeing. So, but that is what I have for you. So if you're listening on the podcast feed, welcome, and you're brand new. If you like what you're hearing, go ahead and subscribe. If you've been listening for a while and you haven't subscribed, come on, go ahead and do it. Seriously, you're already here. You're committed. You're like 12 minutes into this episode. And then once you're subscribed, please rate and review the podcast. That helps us get this message out. And beyond that, sharing this with somebody that you think would like to hear it, whether it be this episode or the podcast as a whole, definitely go ahead and do that. If you're watching on YouTube and you're brand new, welcome. If you like what you're watching, go ahead and subscribe. If you've been around for a while and you've been watching some videos and you haven't subscribed yet, and this just keeps coming up on your algorithm, go ahead and subscribe. Now, YouTube is also going to tell you that you should watch this video. Go ahead and check it out, but don't spend too much time going down the content rabbit hole. I want you working on connecting with yourself, building your forever active lifestyle, living that inside out life. So that is what I have for you. Thank you as always for listening and watching. I'll talk to you again real soon.